I think it was 2005. My mother was slightly unwell and she was feeling a bit lethargic and not herself, and backwards forwards to the doctors, and they couldn't pinpoint exactly what was the problem. Various blood tests all came back fine, and then she had a smear test, which they do in the UK, and that came back that she needed some further tests. She then was given 2 courses of tablets from what we call a locum doctor, which when she gave to the pharmacist said you could not take these 2 tablets together, which she'd already started the course of tablets at this point. She came out from head to toe in a rash, and she just was completely red all over. That then caused a slight more emergency, and she got more tests, and eventually the results came back and she was diagnosed with lymphoma. Lymphoma is a form of cancer which mutates your red blood cells. So when your red blood cells reproduce, they mutate and they form a tumour around the lymph nodes, which is either in your groin area, under your arms, and those places. It's a blood-related cancer. So that involved heavy treatment of chemotherapy, which was a real strong course of every 3 weeks. I lived in London and she lived in Liverpool, which is 4 hours drive away from each other. I'm an only child, so my parents didn't quite know how to tell me, and she was 61 at the time, so still very young. I was completely devastated, but I had a really strong network of friends who just got me straight in the car and drove me 4 hours and dropped me at my house, and then drove back to London. And from then I sat with my mum and we talked about how we tackle the illness. So I contacted my work, who said just take a couple of weeks, get yourself sorted. And I then started the chemo with her. So I went to every single chemotherapy session. We'd have a time slot, maybe 10 to 11. And this room would be full of hundreds of people waiting for their chemotherapy. And I think that really shocked me about the sheer amount of people that were on some form of treatment. So she started the chemotherapy intensely every 3 weeks. So this was around July. She was doing okay, but by the 2nd dose of chemotherapy, she started to lose her hair. So she had very blonde, straight hair, and we decided to get my hairdresser, who'd been a long-term hairdresser, to crop all of her hair really short, which I think that was for a woman, it was the biggest kind of thing for her to start losing her. You know, as much as you're going through an illness and pain and whatever, you suddenly start to change in your looks, and that was very difficult for my father to handle. I think it's like he couldn't face what was happening. My mother, she was really strong. She was, I'll get through this, and she didn't want to worry anybody. She would never tell us she was in pain, or she didn't complain, and she just felt like she was putting us all out, you know, because she had to go to hospital. And our hairdresser had been a long-term hairdresser, and she did a really nice short haircut, and it really suited my mum, and so she was quite happy with that. And she'd never ever in her life had her hair this short, so she liked that. But then from that, it started to, around the sides, started to fall out. So she'd wake up in the morning and it'd be, that I think was quite upsetting for her. So we went for a wig fitting, and that was, as much as we tried to make it fun, and we tried to have a laugh, because the lady was really, had a lot of empathy, and with the lady that fitted the wigs was really good. But you know, it wasn't very nice. You've completely lost your dignity, and suddenly you're wearing something that makes you look silly. But we had a giggle, and she did get a wig, and she came away with one that didn't look too dissimilar to her normal hair. But to be honest, she never ever wore it because she found it uncomfortable. So she would just wear a hat or a headscarf. But she didn't go totally bald. She lost in patches. And because her hair was short, it didn't look that bad actually. You can cover up a wound, but you can't cover up your hair loss. I think it's brave for the people that are going to have the hair shape, but I also think it's brave for the people who have cancer to go through the chemo and to go through all of this. Hats off to everybody that's doing it. It's a real show of solidarity, as she said. And she said for her, she'd rather be free and bald than with a wig, because she found that even more people would look and stare. With this, she felt quite strong, and it helped her in a way. So I don't know, maybe that's some kind of therapy, I don't know. I'm not going to put this into genders, but I think for a man to carry off a bald head is much easier than a woman. In my mother's case, it made her look young again when she got her hair cut off. She had very straight, very thick blonde hair, and when she got it all chopped off, it kind of went slightly darker, and she liked it, and you know, people commented it looked nice, but that was only at the beginning, and then it obviously got harder as she started to get a bit more patchy. And we approached winter, and so it was colder in England, so she would wear a hat, so it wasn't too bad when we were outside. But I don't know how I could cope personally with having no hair. I don't know how. Come December, she took a really bad turn, and she had to get admitted back into hospital. She was in hospital over Christmas. They let her out for Christmas Day, and then I think it was mid-January, they halted her next course of chemo because she wasn't strong enough at this point to have any more chemo. And the beginning of February, it was a friend's birthday back in London, and my mum said, please go and give yourself a break. And on a Thursday, I'd gone home for a shower. She called me and said the consultant's been to see me and has told me there's nothing else they can do. It's just a matter of time. Do I want to go to a hospice? Do I want to go home? Or do I want to stay here? And I had a friend who was a nurse who dealt with palliative care, and she taught me through step by step the process of dying and what's involved and what's going to happen. And I wasn't stupid. They wouldn't have kept her in a hospital bed if she was going to be alive for months. So we knew we were talking about days. And then she passed away 3 days later. But she was fully conscious. She took no morphine. She wanted to deal with the pain because she saw her mother go onto a morphine drive and become a vegetable for a week. She wanted to kind of get through every moment until the end. And then we just sat with her and she just took her last breath, and that was it. This was the 18th of February, which was my dad's 60th birthday. And I think she kind of hung on till that day. And that's it really. That's the story of what happened. I had time with my mum to grieve with her, which sounds a bit bizarre, but we had a week, an intense week where we sat and chatted. I was very career orientated, very career focused, and I had this amazing job, and I travelled the world and I'd done everything. And I used to say, oh, lots of my friends had children really early, and I was quite upset my mother didn't get to see, which is now Marley, but grandchildren. And she told me, don't worry about that. I've enjoyed seeing you. You grow and hear about you, which was nice. And she could talk. She was fully coherent. It's just her body was dying, you know, and that was real shame about it. Well, by this point, she totally lost all dignity. She couldn't do anything for herself. And I remember having her head over the side of the bed and washing her head, and I remember thinking her head was like a baby's head because she just had fluffy hair at this point, and her head seemed so tiny. And so the grieving we did together while she was still alive, and then she even got me to bring in a checkbook and write a check, so she had all of her accounts in order. I had gone from having everything, and it didn't matter what car I had, what money I had, what a nice apartment I had, nothing. It couldn't bring back that, like, love, you know, it couldn't bring back that relationship. You know, it made me see what was the values in life, really. She believed that she was going on to something else. She was going to be with her parents, and she strongly believed that she would be watching over me, and I still feel like she is. She believed in guardian angels, and she believed in this little thing about white feathers, and she used to say, if you see a white feather, that's me, and if you see a rainbow, I'm there. So I think when you go through something like that, I think you do cling on to faith. She used to go to church every Sunday, and Chris, I'm sorry, but a white feather's just flew past.
She's around, I can make out. The energy is there.
People who have cancer don't treat them like a victim, you know, and help and have ears, you know, to listen, and I think for me it was to research and to find out what was happening, because you hear the word cancer, there's so many, and they're all so different. If you've got information, you're informed, aren't you, so you can deal with things better. And just listen, I think, and be strong for that other person.